Hello, this is Professor Kim Nelson with the Jewelry Design Department at the Fashion Institute of Technology, continuing our tutorial series for JD138 or Basic CAD Modeling. This is our stone project that we've been working on recently. The topic of this tutorial is going to be drawing a technical drawing or a multi-view drawing of these stones, or at least the round stone. Okay. I'm going to start by drawing the crown of the diamond. The crown is everything from the girdle to the table. Okay. We're going to draw a front view of the stone. Going to start with a construction line at this grid intersection, going both sides, enter, and click. Going to create a vertical construction line the same way. Start at 0, both sides. Do that again slowly so you can see it. Start of line, center. Oh, actually, I need to move these over. 1 second. There. Okay. Second construction line again. Beginning point 0. I want both sides option. So I can click that or just type in a B, pull down, and click. Turned off my grid snap. I won't want that for a while. I'm going to do an offset. I want to bring down as much information as I can between views, and the most obvious thing I'm going to need is the overall width of the stone. So I will offset through point, which is enter, both sides, which will be enter, end snap. I'll keep end and int snaps active. That brings down the full width of the stone. Okay, I also want to bring down the full width of the table. So once again, through point to release this from its previous distance, enter, both sides, enter, and the widest point on this table facet. That brings down as much information as I can for right now from the top view to the front view. This is our girdle reference line. I'll go ahead and actually draw our girdle with a straight line using intersect object snap. You'll only see it if you turn off the construction lines, but it's there. Okay. I need to get the proper elevations here. Alright. The proper elevations for a brilliant cut stone are pavilion equals 43%. Okay. Crown, that's the portion above the girdle, equals 16% of girdle width or diameter. So our stone is 10 millimeters. 43% of 10 millimeters is 4.3 millimeters. So I'm going to offset this construction line of the girdle down 4.31. Okay. Usually we've been doing through point, but since I know exactly what I want, I'll type it in, 4.3. And now Rhino's asking a question. Side to offset. Remember, the blinking light is a question mark. Pull down to the below the girdle and click. Same process for going above, except for 16% of a 10 millimeter stone is 1.6 millimeters. Wait. Use my drawing line color. And draw the front view of my stone. I'll do that again slower, so you can understand exactly what each point means. This is at the very base of the pavilion, or right here in the middle of the stone, at the bottom of the stone. That's the full depth in the center position. This is our girdle at its widest point. This is the top of the crown, which is our table at its widest point. Drawing the table in the front view. Back down to the girdle at its widest point. And back to the culet. And if I turn that off, you can see that I have the front view of the stone drawn. At least its profile, its basic shape. I'm going to clean up my drawing. Okay. I'm going to draw, next thing I need is the elevation for the points of the star facets, or the hips of the bezel facets, depending on how you want to look at it. Okay. So the curve I'm trying to duplicate, or the elevation, would be this line. You'll remember we made that line when we were drawing the stone originally. Sorry for the pause. I have a little office emergency here I'm attending to. Okay. Back at it. So, I know that the widest point of this line is right here at the point of the star facet. So I'll go ahead and offset a construction line that distance. Through point, both sides. Oh, meant to, sorry, this curve. Through point, both sides. And that carries the width of this line down to here. I need to find its actual location along here though. And this is not midway. This is farther down. You can see that. Okay. If we were to do a mechanical drafting technique for finding the bisector on a curve, you would create two circles bigger than midpoint, and you can see that that is not halfway. Okay. By the way, this would be a valid way to draw the next curve. Okay. I'll make them a little larger. Just a circle that goes well past half. I made it again very quickly because I hit enter to repeat the command. Center of circle is right here, and since Rhino always remembers the last dimension for a circle, I just hit enter to accept, and that makes the exact same size circle, which is important if you're going to use this technique to bisect a line. Bisect means split in half. And I can draw a line from this intersection to this intersection. Okay? Another way I can create the geometry I need here is I can do a curve perpendicular to line perpendicular from curve. This is what we did in class. I pick the midpoint snap. Snap onto the midpoint of the curve. Now it's going to want to go anywhere but where I just clicked. To make it begin from your initial click point, you click here in the command options, from first point. Pull it out as long as you need it and click. Okay? So that takes this line perpendicular right off of this curve. And we can compare and see that they are the same line. So either method would work. What is critical is where these two meet, because this is our actual elevation line. Okay? Right here. That point is what we need. That's why we brought this information down, why we brought this information off of this plane at the midpoint. So I'm going to take a construction line and run it through that point. Since I need to have freedom to set where it goes, click through point or type T enter. I don't need a both sides option this time. And I can use an intersect snap to grab that intersection of those two curves. There's no reason in your drawing to go through the trouble of creating that point. I put that little point there to make it more obvious to you where we were going. Alright, I'm going to clean up my drawing. So now I have an elevation line that reflects that elevation in the top view. I want to draw my star facets first. And there are two pieces of information for my star facet. Okay? One of those pieces of information is the cleft at the top of the table here. The cleft in between each star facet. Since we're looking at the stone from this direction, nothing beyond the halfway point is visible. These facets would all be in back. But these facets, everything along the front here, is visible. So I need to get a reference point for these points, the clefts of the stars. Okay, so I'm going to offset through point, both sides, grab this one. But you'll notice we already have it. This was also the widest point of the table, right? So we already created that line. We can create it again, but there's no need. I'll do it for clarity. And we need these two. To keep things simpler, I'm going to trim off each of those marks so that we know that they are at the table. Now I need the information at the points. Okay. So I need point, 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 and point. I need to bring that information down. Well, I've already got this one. This is the one I used to mark the widest point on this elevation. So we're not going to replicate that. But I will use offset through point, both sides, to click on the other points. There are those two, which are the same distance. And this one, which is on my center line, so I don't need to do anything there. To help clarify what these are indicating, I will clean off everything but the center line above my mid-elevation. So it's clear that these are for the clefts, these are for the points. And now I will draw my star facets. Starting with this point and going to this cleft. Then down to this point, up to this cleft, down to the center point, back up to this cleft, down to this point, back up to that cleft, out to this point. Enter when done. Okay, so I've got that. Clean up my drawing. Now I need my points of my bezel facets, these kite-shaped facets. I need a reference point here, and that point is on the girdle. Okay? I already have the points of the stars in place, so I don't need to mark those. But I do need to mark the points of these bezel facets along the girdle line. Through point, both sides. Gonna catch this one and these two here. So now I can draw my bezel facets. Starting from the hip of the bezel facet, down to its point, back up to its hip, down to its point, back up to its hip in the center, back down to its point, up to its hip, down to its point, up to its hip, and enter to complete it. The last piece of information I need is the dividing lines on the upper girdle facets. So I will offset both sides through point. There's this seam, but I already have that information. It's the widest point. But I'll do it anyway, just for clarity. There's this seam. And there's the one in the center, which I can't duplicate because it's already there in my center line. So these are all at the girdle. These will all be a straight line, a simple line. This one starts at the base of the seam and goes to the point of the star, or hip of the bezel. This one starts at the joint at the girdle, up to the point, joint, point, joint, point, joint, point. Okay. Clean up my drawing. And I've completed. However, there's an extra line in here. This initial front view that we drew, this profile, wasn't really accurate because it didn't take into account the two different planes here. So we're going to explode this. And without touching anything, we're going to hold down the control key. Then we're going to pick out this one and this segment, these two segments. Without touching anything else in the background, going to hit join. That'll join these two back together, and this one will still be on its own because it had nothing to join to. Delete those two segments. And now, if I turn off the construction line so you can see it, the front view of our crown is done. Now I need to do the front view of the pavilion. Now most of your drawings have this abutted right up against here. I'll do that so that we are the same. Okay. But it doesn't matter. What I want to do is bring this view around to here. So if I left it where it was, the rotation center would be here. If it's where most of yours are, the rotation center will be here. The rotation center will be halfway between the two. Okay? So, transform, I'll move this back up, just for that point, just to make the point. Transform, rotate, and I want to rotate them both. Center of rotation, the midpoint, which in this case is the grid point, the grid intersection. Angle, 180 degrees. Enter. And that swaps them places. So now I can easily draw from the bottom view to capture the information for the pavilion. The first step is the same as it was for drawing the technical drawing of the crown. Circle, center, radius, pulling out to this point to show that we need this elevation. The information we can bring from the top view for that will be its widest point, so we'll offset it, our construction line, on both sides and bring that down. Okay. This functions the same way as it does in the front view for the crown, in that there is a peak here. Alright? If we do a bisector using the circles like we did last time, or the line perpendicular from curve, it doesn't matter, you will see that in this case it falls right on there. So it's going to give us an inaccurate drawing. We need to have a slight peak here. Alright? So I'm going to just go ahead and draw that. Starting here. And this you can do by eye. Just a little bit out. I use near snap. That's the first time we've used it. Allows you to snap along a curve, and wherever you click, that's where it'll snap to. That just makes sure that that line is exactly on that curve. And then back to end snap. And enter to finish. I'll just explode this, delete this. Actually, I'll delete them both, so I might as well just thrown it away. Mirror it. F2, F4. And that is a more accurate pavilion. Do an offset of our construction line. To show. Clean up the drawing. So this represents this. Okay. So, now I'm going to draw the pavilion of the stone. I'm going to start, really the only information we need. We have all of the joints and the points already plotted along the girdle. The point of each main facet, which is what this is the same as the point of every, it reaches or touches the point of every bezel facet. And the seams of the upper girdle facets are the same as the seams on the lower girdle facets. So we have all the information along the girdle we need. What we don't have is the information along our elevation line. Okay? So, we need to bring that down. We have a mistake. I'm sorry, class. I made an error. Bear with me. Actually, what I want is for this to intersect on this line. It needs to be accurate. giving me a hip or a bump, a corner. I'll show you what I mean. Here's the original line that we had. I drew this based off its center line, but actually I need to draw that bump based on intersecting with this curve here. So I'm going to just turn on my points, F10 like we did in our tracing. I'm going to grab that point, M-enter to move. This is the first time we've done precision movement, so this is good. I'm going to hit M-enter, gives me my usual point to move from. I'm going to snap right onto that point. You see how my marker departs from my cursor to grab it. So now I have exactly that point. I'm going to right click on near snap, and I'll just slide it along this curve until I get a nice hip or bump there. That's fine. I'll hit F11 to turn off the point. I'll go ahead and delete this, delete that, and I'm going to need to delete this curve on this side because it's no longer accurate. Mirror, and we're fine. So, back on track. I turned off near snap. Near snap is a very dangerous snap because it'll seem like you're always snapping to something because it grabs that near it, because there are plenty of curves for it to magnet to. So, unless you're specifically using near snap, be sure to turn it off. It'll confuse your drawing if you don't. Offset, construction line, through to this elbow here. And now we're going to bring our elevations down from our bottom view. This one we already have. So I need the remaining ones. So I need these, that cleft of the main facets. And this cleft I really can't get because it's the center line. Tidy things up so it's a little clearer. And draw. First thing I want to draw is this main, lower girdle dividing line. But it already exists. Here's the girdle. Here's the girdle. Here's the elevation line. So we already have that. This line already represents this. So we'll start drawing the main facet. Okay? And it might be more sensible to start from the bottom and work out. It's up to you. I'll start at the girdle. So here's the point. Here's the point. Down to this hip. Done. From this point, down to this hip, up to that point, down to this hip, up to this point at the girdle, down to this hip at the elevation, up to this point at the girdle, and down to this hip on the elevation. Enter. And now I just draw my dividing lines, which will be simple straight lines. Okay? That's going from this dividing facet, this dividing line, down to here, and then continues from there to the culet. From this dividing line to the elevation cleft, on down to the culet, and the other one already exists. Clean up my drawing. Turn off my construction lines, And I have the full drawing of my stone. Okay. Last thing I'm going to do is swing these back around because it makes more sense to me to have the top view right next to this front view. So I'll do that. Using the mid point between these two, which in this case is that grid intersection. So using grid snap, angle of rotation is 180 degrees. There we go. Now, the way this will actually look on a layout is we will move this bottom view below the front view. So that would be how this drawing would end up as an official draft. Okay? And this is how I want yours to look when you turn it into me for homework. Thanks for watching.